Well, hello there, and welcome to Sonic Safari, a channel featuring tales of record collecting. I am Marcus, your host, a Swedish hipster lost in the fog in San Francisco. This is my very first episode, so I am nervous but also very excited, so let's just have the records do the talking, shall we? On today's episode, the first installment of Soundtrack of My Life, but first the 2021 Sonic Safari Awards, featuring some pretty unique categories. So do we really need another 2021 best of list? Probably not. Am I way too late? No doubt. So without any further ado, here's the 2021 Sonic Safari Awards. So our very first award for best compilation goes to Brighter Days Ahead from Coal Mine Record. This record summarizes 2021 in many ways, just starting with the title. I think a lot of us were looking for brighter days ahead. Also, I would say that unfortunately, 2021 had a lot of this, the empty record stores. And Coal Mine Record continued to release music on 7 inches that are compiled on this compilation. This record also looks for the positive, the light at the end of the tunnel. It's filled with funky, groovy sounds from artists like GA20, the Monophonics, and Ghost Funk Orchestra. This has really been a record that picks me up when my mood is down. So our next award for Best Happy Hour goes to Sebastian's Melodi. So you all know that moment when you finally get off the Zoom call. You can open your favorite bottle of wine, sit down in your sweatpants, and finally just relax. And this is the perfect soundtrack to that moment. The best way of explaining their music would be to say that they are like a musical cousin to Khruangbin. They are both rooted in a psychedelic pop, but while Khruangbin has a smoother, more refined sound, Kid Sebastian is gritty and funky. It's the soundtrack to a late-night underground club full of vibrant colors. So the award for quirkiest album of 2021 goes to Buck Meek's Two Saviors, released on Keel Scales. One of my favorite bands as of late has been Big Thief. One thing that makes them special to me is that positive energy between the band members that I really think shines through in their music. It's also incredible the amount of creative output that they've had, releasing almost an album a year, maintaining a really high quality. So when the guitarist Buck Meek released his second solo album, Two Saviors, I jumped on it. And this is the Vinyl Me Please edition on a C-class blue vinyl, if you believe the hype sticker that is. And this is also signed by Buck himself. The strength of Buck Meek is in his guitar playing. He has this inside-out way of playing that makes his songs really unique, and it's almost as if he knew it, because his vocals are hushed and almost unsure, but it really creates a more intimate feeling to his music. You can really sense the foundation of Big Thief in his music, even though he flirts a lot with country and Americana. The award for Best Reissue goes to Gillian, Welch, and David Rawlings for all the good times are past and gone. You might think that the title of this record represents 2021, but I didn't want to go that dark. You could really say that 2021 was the year of the reissue. It's incredible how many amazing recordings came out last year, especially in the world of jazz, but the election was actually pretty simple to me. This recording was initially released in 2020, and it won a Grammy for Best Folk. However, it kind of went under the radar, maybe in part for a very, very short run. These versions and traditional songs are home recordings, but there is definitely nothing DIY about this at all. The sound is absolutely insane. Now, I am no audiophile, but the one thing that I can say is that whenever I put on this record, I have to turn down the volume because it sounds so intense compared to other records in my collection. I would also say that it sounds very balanced. Gillian and David have been playing together for decades, and you can tell it's almost like they're intertwined by the hips musically. What's interesting though is that they have never released music in their joint name, until now that is. So our last award for most important record of the year goes to Sons of Kemet, Black to the Future, released on Impulse. This is the Vinyl Me Please issue released on a brown splatter vinyl. And first of all, just look at that cover. It could easily have won an award for best cover. I just absolutely love it. This record really represents the future to me. Shabaka Hutchings, the saxophone player, is really at the center of the new jazz wave coming out of London. He plays for Sons of Kemet, Shabaka Hutchings, and the Ancestors, and The Comet is Coming. If you're curious to discover more about the jazz scene in London, I would really encourage you to check out We Out Here from Brownwood's recording. So what stands out to me about this record is that it's clearly a modern jazz recording, but it does have a really heavy New Orleans sound, with heavy tubas driving the sound almost like a brass band walking down Main Street. And at the core of this record, and why I think it's the most important one of 2021, is the message. It's clear, it's unapologetic, it's urgent, half shouted, half preached around collective oppression. So all the awards have been handed out. There's no more champagne. Thank you so much for attending the first annual Sonic Safari Awards. And I would obviously love to hear your thoughts on the best picks of last year. This will be a reoccurring segment where we look at a record in a bit more in-depth. And it's really just an opportunity for you to get to know me a bit better through my record collection. And it only makes sense for me to start at the very beginning. I'm born and raised in the north of Sweden, and every Christmas my parents would pack my sister and me into our 1968 off-brown Volvo, a stunning piece of machinery, and we would drive to my grandparents' place. In our car, we only had one tape cassette, and one tape cassette only. On side A, Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, and on side B, Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms. This tape would be on constant repeat, and the funny thing is that no one really seemed to mind. This specific release is a 1985, a bit beat-up copy that I found in the dollar bins. I know that there are these incredible reissues coming up, but for some reason, I'm just gonna stick to this one. So, back to the car. I can still to this day hear that clickety-clack sound when the tape deck will turn from side A to side B, and my 6-year-old mind would perk up because I knew what was about to happen. Money for nothing. I'd heard it a million times, but it really didn't matter. I was getting ready for that moment, the crescendo. I mean, you've all heard it. The synth, that sound of the 80s, setting the stage, the drums entering, the intensity starting to build. I could feel myself levitating in my booster seat, and that's when it happened. Mark Knopfler's guitar. Oh my God, that guitar. It was the most incredible thing I've ever heard. I wanted to take off my seatbelts and rip my t-shirt in half and just scream out, this was rock and roll. This record is really important to me because it transports me into my grandmother's kitchen, where it always smelled of waffle even though she never made one. It's also an incredibly important record because as a 6-year-old sitting in that car, it made me realize that music isn't only about sound, it's also about feeling. And it sent me on a journey to understand more about that feeling, a journey that continues to this day and will never end, kind of like that tape in our car. So that's it for today's episode. Like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. And until next time, tack och adjö.